And here's the man. Nice to see you.
Hey, George.
How are things?
Fine.
So what's it like talking about music again in this context?
Talking about it is not quite as good as doing it, but because in the end, a lot of it is inspired, and you can't quite rationalize it sometimes. So people think, for instance, that I'm coming back with a kind of a definite plan, but I haven't got a plan. I just started recording again after I'd made a conscious decision, to pick up the guitar, and then it kind of flowed from there. And so it's happening like as it happens. Conscious
decision, and your son brought a guitar home. Now, had you thought about picking up a guitar before that?
Yeah, I put away that idea for the fact that, after I'd been singing for so many years, and I was like, I've done it, I've done everything. I got an incredible repertoire of songs, and then I discovered a new life, and from that moment on, I didn't really feel I needed a guitar. It was almost like a crutch at one point. If I needed anything in my life, it was music. That was my life. That was my religion. But when I found my spiritual home, if you like, I didn't need that anymore. So I left it. Picking it up again was something quite amazing, because I hadn't played it for about 20 years. And some people can't believe that, but it was a fact.
You hadn't picked up a guitar for 20 years?
Yeah. And then my son, ends up with an incredible talent for music. He buys a guitar, writes his own songs. So suddenly I've got the guitar in the house again. And that's where it started from.
And did you walk by it a few times and say, not today? maybe tomorrow. Did you have that sort of weird courting period?
We tried not to notice each other, but then eventually we owned up. Come here.
Now, you stopped playing, I thought initially, not because you felt like you had done it. I thought you weren't sure if that's something you should have been doing.
Yeah,
but that changed?
There were many combination of reasons, really. One of them, I think, was the fact that I just simply had done everything I wanted to do. I climbed so many mountains in the musical field that, there wasn't much left. I was living in Rio, and, that to me was the epitome of just the best kind of music you could ever make. And but there was also the fact that when I embraced Islam, which was a relatively unknown religion, at that time, there was very little going on the political scene. The Iranian Revolution hadn't happened. It was all quiet. It was like you had these books about Islam written from an Orientalist point of view, and then there were other Sufi books, and then there was the Quran. So when I entered Islam, it was because I found so many answers, in this religion that I think have been kept hidden, from a lot of people, me included. And when I came to it, there was nothing in the Quran which said anything about music. It was all to do with, improving the human being. It wasn't just speaking to Arabs, or it wasn't just speaking to, Turks. It was speaking to everybody, speaking to me about how I could, get on the path, get on the right path. And so there was nothing about music, but I knew that there were problems and complications with being in the music business. When I asked the Imam, finally when I embraced Islam in 1977, I told the Imam in the mosque that, what I did, and he never heard of me, of course.
You must have loved that, though.
Yeah, loved it. And then, but he said, well, that's no problem, as long as the song's, morally okay, continue. And then I heard some other voices from another section of the community saying that it's all prohibited. Musical instruments, you should stay away from there, and it's vainglorious and whatever. And I just decided to get out of the conflict. I just didn't want a conflict. So I said, well, let's leave this. And there was a chance for me, as I say, to get a break.
Was there a conflict within you because I know, to say that you had done it, the only question that popped in my head was, did you love to play, and did you miss it?
I didn't. Well, I I'd sung all my songs, and I'd written as many as, I don't know, 200 songs, and at a certain point, you end up, fulfilling contracts, and you've got another record to make, and so therefore that became more of a chore and not an inspiration anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started to pick up the guitar, it was because I loved music, because I wanted to express myself. After a while, you get like, to my stature, as I was, people are expecting you to come out every year or every 2 years, with another album as prolific, showing, inventiveness and experiences. And quite frankly, I needed a new experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that was.
Well, and also showing that more than just putting out a record that would sell a lot. You were kind of charged with helping people articulate how they feel, because that's how they perceived you at the time. I suspect that's the kind of pressure that would make anybody run from everything.
Yeah, it was difficult, because you are responsible, in a way, for nurturing people's concepts and ideals and visions.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to find out where I was going as much as anybody needed.
On the new one, yep, my mic, yep, sure. Good enough. Excellent. How's that? Check 1, 2, 3. That's gonna work. All right then. Cool. You were good.
Yeah.
Well then, to the new record, there's a song that is from long before you embracing Islam. There's a song from like the late '60s, right?
Yeah.
68.
Interesting. That was one of the first ones I did with Rick Knowles, my producer, because he wanted to, get me in the studio. I said, well, okay, so I pulled out this old song, and I'd written it in 1968. It never got recorded. But it was a beautiful song, beautiful melody. And interesting thing about that song was, one of the lines I say in that song is, that about this search for this place of happiness and bliss. I say, I'm not the only one, who's dreaming about that. And 3 years later, John Lennon writes a song called Imagine, and he says exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the only one. I thought that was a beautiful moment where I realized, that certainly I was on the same plane as many others, and I needed to articulate that. So that was one of the songs, and I brought it out in this album. People love that.
It shows that the journey you've been on is remarkable, well documented, but that to come back after decades and decades, you can go back to something you did right in the beginning.
Right. Music is timeless. It's like an ocean or a city covered in dust, and you go in there and you kind of brush it off and you find something.
Well, the good music is timeless.
Good music, yeah, correct. And so I've still got a lot of songs which have yet to be brought out, and ideas. And so many new ones now. So usually I carry a cassette with me, but I've got piles of cassettes now. I just don't know when I'm going to revisit them, but I've got so many new ideas as well.
So is that kind of a pseudo plan then? It's like you're back on the bike and you're looking around thinking maybe I'm ready for stage 2 of this musical career?
I don't know. I'm not planning, and I don't know what's going to happen next. But I do know I've got a few songs, left in me, and I think right now at my age, I could bring a little bit of credibility, to this art, because it's not just for the business, it's not just for making a name. I've got a name, I don't need that.
You have 3 names.
3 names, thanks for that. Yeah. But I do need to communicate, and I want to connect. And I left a lot of people wondering, whoa, where the hell did he go, and that needs explaining. And the press and the media hasn't been that kind to me. Since I've embraced Islam, it's almost been an onslaught.
Well, 2 years after the revolution starts, and then
2 years after, and then Intifada, and so many other things, and all of a sudden I'm a great target, to ask any question about any issue. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't prepared.
Now you know what hip-hop artists feel like. Something happens in the black community, they go to entertainers.
Right.
It's a very unique experience. There are not a lot of high-profile Islamic pop stars
Right, that's right.
that the Western world knew before.
That's right.
So you
It's
kind
a
of...
unique position, but I see it like today that I'm a looking glass through which, Muslims can see the West and the West can see Islam. And I think that's a very, very valuable position.
It is, but it's a difficult one too because, I mean, even within every religion there are so many different ways to see it. So which version of Islam are they seeing through you? Because you were a successful star who stopped making music because some said you shouldn't make music, but you can. So what are you showing people?
Well, what I'm showing, I think, is the broadness and the tolerance that actually is part and parcel of Islamic culture. Because if you look, for instance, at Islamic Spain, that was a time when all religions were living together. Christianity, Judaism, there was a flourishing of science, of knowledge. The guitar was probably introduced to Europe through Islamic Spain by the Muslims. Coffee came to us through Turkey, and so we're looking at a whole vision of civilization, Islamic civilization, which has been forgotten, buried in the dust. It's that kind of thing I'm trying to revive, the creative aspect of spiritual thought and life, which I think is there's a lot of people thirsty for that today.
And just a little while ago we had Tariq Ramadan on our show talking about, he doesn't refer to it as modern Islam, but the idea of showing people this kind of Islam, and I wonder, do you get together and can people say, listen, now's the time where you can't do it by yourself. Like you by yourself can't introduce people to just, you almost need a movement of sorts. Are there people like reclaiming what Islam is?
I think it starts with, a lot of people, as I said, when I wrote that line, and John Lennon wrote the same line, I mean, it means that people, merge together in some kind of thought process where the needs of humanity suddenly become very crystallized and people know what is needed, what's next. Somebody comes up with an idea and then somebody else does, and suddenly you've got a movement. But I think that's an awakening which is happening generally in the Muslim world. There's a whole new generation that is feeling torn between its cultural home, which actually is the West, and its spiritual home, which is Islam. Now, how do we join these things together? And is there a joining? And of course there is. There are those, of course, advocating clash of civilizations, whereas I'm seeing nothing like that. I'm seeing that there's a cross-fertilization of civilizations and cultures, and that's what life's all about, really. We all drive around in cars, regardless of where the car is made. We all like the computers, internet, and we all like good food. We go to different restaurants, different cultures, no problem, And so I think that we need to also create more opportunities for that cross-fertilization, to happen.
I was raised in a very devout Christian home, and it was one way of viewing it, the Bible, and it was interesting how their number one goal was to go tell it from the mountain, to convert people, to bring them onto my side. And I know in lots of fundamentalist aspects of any religion, that's convert other people. And I thought, how can we do that when if the end game is what you do when you die, is get ready for the next life? Is it about let's all get along, or is it about, listen, you have to come and join this side because we need to go to heaven, which is what a lot of Christians are like, a lot of fundamentalist Muslims are like as well. So are you finding you're gaining much traction with the people with the imams and the people who are trying to, say, listen, we can't, it's not really about cross-fertilization as much as your responsibility to God is to bring people onto his side?
You're talking more from a spiritual point of view, and I think that is inevitably going to continue. The people, if they have an opinion and a belief, they might be worried if their belief is challenged. So they definitely want more people to believe like them, so there's no challenge. But it seems that God doesn't want that. It seems that, and it's one of the verses of the Quran, I remember it stuck out in my mind when I read it. It said, whoever believes in God and the last day, whether he's Jewish, Christian, or Sabine, it was another denomination, and does good, their reward is with their Lord. I said, hang on.
That's
So then so we're all being judged. And there's another verse in the Quran which, interestingly, says, if God had wanted to make you one community, he could have, but he wishes to test you as to that which he's given you. So therefore there's a wisdom. There's a wisdom in the fact that we have slightly different points of view. But the final goal, we've got to agree, is back to God. And that's where the final solution or the final judgment will be decided.
Much has been said about your early records when you were putting out Cat Stevens albums and the search, the quest, right? How does it change for you when you have found what you're looking for, essentially? Because, there's, I'm sure, still a quest of sorts.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a saying that, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Well, okay, so I've discovered some of the answers, big answers to big questions. Fine. But then there are intricate, aspects, and there's a whole lot to learn. I mean, for instance, I just recently learned about the guitar coming, to Europe through Islamic Spain. I mean, not everybody knows that. There's so many things I don't know. And when you start to look at science and what that could enhance of our knowledge of how God created this universe, I mean, it's awesome. We're never going to stop learning. So that's the way I see it,
Just to keep on going and to search it through your music. Have you found, the idea for a lot of people when they go home again, doesn't matter how old they are now or how much they've experienced in life, they go home and they still kind of get that feeling in their stomach when they walk through their parents' door or see an ex or see something. When you decided to do this again and make music and play shows and do these songs and all of that, did you have any of that kind of anxiety that reminded you of maybe perhaps part of the reason you needed to get away in the first place?
No way. It was like it felt absolutely right. And it's like when you're writing a song, and it's a very mysterious process, but you realize that you've been meant to write that song. And so I feel the same. I feel I'm meant to sing. And that's the end of the story. I just feel right about it. And any doubts I had, any shadows of doubts, are all, burnt out now, as far as I'm concerned, because what I see, the response that I'm getting, is exactly what I wanted to see. It's the heartwarming welcome and the feeling that, hearts don't really move that far away. They always kind of stay in the same place. But the emotions that we all feel are all shared by us all. We need to communicate.
You play all your songs when you play shows?
I play, some of the old ones. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
Did you ever think, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this again? First part of Peace Train or whatever?
Yeah, a little bit kind of deja vu happens when, you're sitting on stage and the lights are on, Probably that's the bit I don't like the most, is the kind of the stage thing, Because music to me is very, it's very close, it's very personal. And so the smaller the venue, the better. Yeah. The thing I don't like is being driven onto arenas, 20,000 people. I'm never going to do that. Please. I hope.
Well, it's your call. You could say no.
Yeah, I could, but I got willingly so.
Well, did you have you were supposed to do Live Aid, weren't you?
Live Aid,
yeah,
absolutely.
You're supposed to, the conversion was supposed to... Is that true?
It was true that I was hanging around in the wings there, ready to come on and give a short talk. And it was true that I think Elton John overran, and they were a little bit worried because I didn't have a guitar and they didn't quite know what's he going to do. So they backed off, and I said, that's God's will.
Were you really that nice about it?
Yeah.
Really? 10 years earlier, you wouldn't... How would you have handled it 75?
Well, there's the difference. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand, is that, when I embraced Islam, I wanted to get my life together. I wanted to improve my character. And all those things that disturb you in your life, the things you get angry about, impatient about, greedy about, I started to bring those things under control. And that was one of the results, for instance. It didn't happen, so...
Okay.
So what?
It's amazing how much, when you go away for so long from the arena that people came to know you in, how they don't know anything about you. Like, well, most people would know that you were on the road with Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that was good. And he was a quiet character. I mean, ultimately, this guy was very, very inward, you know, and subtle. But when he got on stage, you know, it was a different story. It was the first time we saw somebody burning their guitar, you know, on stage. That was like, it happened during that tour in 1967.
Did the lifestyle of rock and roll almost kill you? The drugs and the booze and all that stuff, was that?
Yeah, I mean, that's not fiction. That's true. I ended up with tuberculosis after about 1.5 years of this frantic, you know, pop star life. And wow, that was the point I began to think seriously about, well, what's next? You know, supposing I died, and well, do I disappear, or does the world disappear? What's going to happen? I had my Christian education, and I knew basically there was right and wrong. You know, I wasn't sure that they were totally right or that they were totally right, but I believed that there were certain guidelines to life which were kind of obvious. But there were some questions which were definitely still kind of grey areas which I wanted to sort out.
You talk a lot about communication, and I think which is why a lot of people who love music listen to it, because they're getting something from it, they're feeling something from it. We talked about 1979, the revolution. To be the most famous Islamic musician today, it's almost as if people are coming to you to know more about it, because they don't. Islam to people is CNN, man, and Fox News. That's what they know.
That's really, really sad, really sad. And people have stopped, you know, finding out for themselves, and so, you know, and hearsay is really the worst of sources, you know, for information. So that's why, yeah, you need credible people to talk honestly and enlighteningly, you know, about life and what they can offer and what we can learn. We can all learn something from each other. No doubt.
Your brother was joking that when he had found out that you became one of the Muslims that people talked to the most or talked about the most, you became a representative, he kind of laughed to himself, thinking, there he is again.
There goes again.
He's still on stage.
Yeah.
You know?
It's part of my life's history, is that whenever I do something, if I do it with sincerity, I believe there's a little kind of, I don't know, little bird there that comes down and says, listen to this guy, right? I'm not in charge of that, but I've been given that position, and I feel responsible, and so I try to be honest.
What kind of questions do you get from people today as opposed to what you would have got in 1984, say?
Well, a lot of things that have turned awfully political, you know, and I'm not interested in that, because politics divides people as far as I can see. Politics is what I learned is the art of slinging mud, you know, and the other side of politics is how to duck when it comes, you know. So what I believe, what we're missing is some good model human beings. Leadership, political leadership, certainly doesn't give you that. It gives you forceful characters and sometimes dictators. Those who have got very rich or very, very, you know, big pockets, those who can actually afford to get themselves elected, they may not be the best people to be looking at for leadership in this world. So we have to go back, I think, to the prophets and the messengers of God. Therefore, if religion is anything of value, it's going to be to go back to the origins and the purpose of religion, which is to actually, you know, tell us how to live together, tell us what the rules are, and to give us great examples of human beings that was so perfect in their nature that we must not ignore them. You know, whether you're talking about Jesus or Moses or Abraham or the Prophet Muhammad, you're talking about these people who were specially designed to do that job.
When you get on stage and you play a song that people remember from 30 or 40 years ago, 35 years ago, and they start to clap for you, and it's you, do you have an uncomfortable moment when you realize it's about you now again, as opposed to...
No, it's like water off a duck. This is not me. This is part of the process. You know, people clap because their instinct is to say thank you somehow. You can't go saying, thank you!
That would be awkward.
In harmony. So they usually clap. It's an instinctive thing. And you appreciate that. But at the same time, I don't take it for myself. I take it for what I'm standing for. You know, so it's more of a principle that I believe it's what I'm doing, not me.
Did you have to learn how to play those songs again? Were you anxious the first time you played it? Did you know that you would... Because I imagine at a certain point it just sort of flowed out of you.
Yeah, it flows. But what's difficult sometimes is remembering all the verses, because I used to write little kind of slight differences with this word, that word, and some of my songs are complicated stories, you know, so I have to force myself to like read those lyrics again and find. But the music comes very easily.
How long did you go before you heard one of your songs? When you stopped playing?
It was like when they wanted to come up with some compilations, you know, back in, I don't know, 1995 or something like that.
So from like 77 through 95, you hadn't...
I didn't really used to listen. I may have done, but no, I don't remember. That was the particular time when they wanted to come out with box sets and everything. And I thought, yeah, you know, I've got enough of a heritage and a legacy of a time and a moment in music where it was beautiful. You know, it was. We were hoping, we had dreams, we had fantastic ideas, and I think it was right to put those things back together again, so people could enjoy that.
Well, and that's a turnaround for you. Because is it true that you asked them to not release your records?
That was a kind of a reaction against the hostility I was feeling from the press at that particular time. So because of that, I just said, well, if you don't want me, I don't want you. You know, and I just, you know, wrote a couple of letters saying, please stop producing my records. But thank God they didn't.
What does your family say to you when you tell them, hey, listen, I'm going to make a record? And, you know, because you had done the A's for Allah, you had done the kids thing, and you had obviously, with the schools, you had been a busy man.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to answer the Cat Stevens questions, and I'm going to be this guy, and it's a weird political time. I'm going out. Like, what was your family? What role did they play?
They really supported me. I mean, my son, of course, was, I think, really delighted and happy that, you know, because he'd seen all the distortions in the media. He knew me. And it was just one of those things that I became a fulfillment, I think, of his ambition as well, to convey another message, you know, a better message. And he's young, you know, so he knows what's happening, and he knows what people are thinking. And a lot of people aren't thinking, actually, you know, they're just being exposed to a lot of one-sided approach to music. And so, therefore, he was supporting me, and my wife supported me. She loves my music.
It's funny how you go years later and you're still in the father and son role. Just the roles reversed, right?
Yeah, the roles reversed. I mean, I've been both, of course. But today my son is my manager. You know, he knows better than I do.
As we look towards 2007 and where we go, do you have a sense of what the world's going to be like? What will be the topics? What, you know, you're an artist. You're supposed to be there just ahead of the curve of what people think and feel, right? Where do you see this going? The emotions, because it's been a kind of a rough time the last few years for a lot of people in the world. Certainly a lot of people in the West is kind of catching up.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the journey that I took, the amount of prejudices and barriers I had to get through to get to where I am today, yeah, that's on a microcosm. On the wider scale, the world doesn't move so fast. It takes time. And people want to keep hold of things that they're familiar with. But at the same time, we're always exposed to threats and problems. You know, life's like that. So we're forced to readjust our understanding of life. And I believe what we need is an era of understanding. That's the biggest thing we could do. You know? Not an era of a clash of civilization. This is an era, an opportunity to learn. That's what we need. And I just wish and I hope that the media can start to play a more constructive role. Whereas I think for many years, the media, and Hollywood particularly, you know, are responsible for blurring the edges between truth and fiction. Right.
But at another side, you look at a government in power who espouses to be a fundamentalist Christian government, and they do things that people go, what? And that's not the media, that's what they're seeing. And then I came back from Darfur not that long ago, and it's a fundamentalist Islamist government, and you go, what? What? So how much of that is just people kind of picking up on the extreme versions of what's happening? Because those things are happening. People claim to be Christians, and they do things that you just think, was that really what the Lord teaches? Mm-hmm. It's just maybe the whole world has got to a point where...
But that's the point, is that these two apparently opposing poles contradict the very teachings of Islam and of Christianity. So when you go back to the understanding of what the message and the pure essence of the message is, it's to do with not hurting your neighbor, mm-hmm. not stealing, not killing, not lying. Hey, is this news or what? And so I think we do need to go back to those aspects, and they're not to be branded this or that. They're basic, Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite song on this record to play? The new one?
I like Maybe There's a World because it's so easy and the chords are so simple.
What's your favorite song from the old version of you to play?
Good question. I like a song called I Wish, I Wish. I like that. And I've written a few extra verses because in that song I say, I wish I knew, I wish I knew. Mm-hmm. What makes me, me, what makes you, you.
Well, now you know, right?
Exactly. So I've written some more verses to that. I'll try and record that for the next record.
Yeah. Nice to see you.